Hey everybody, welcome to another Talking Spaces video. Hope everybody's doing well and getting through their day and hitting their goals and going for more. Um, have you ever just like thought about something like how human beings are? We always think about something, like our thoughts about like, are we doing enough work or are we even get enough for the work? Like, there's a lot of doubts, a lot of thoughts that go into the process that you're on, even especially when it's your own personal process that not everyone understands or agrees with. That's the point. It's not for them to agree with. It's just your own process, your own method, that works for you. You know what I'm saying? Um, I will say that everyone has their own experiences with their processes and their methods and how they go on with them. And some people just don't agree with them, and some people just like they can see why that makes sense. Um, but looking at it now with our own thoughts, it's like we free think, like we're free thinking, right? But only to our like more so to ourselves than more to other people, because it ends up somewhat offending or becoming a bigger issue when you free think and you word out your free thought of opinion and wording it out. But most of the time, before we even think about doing it, we actually think about this one will even sound right before we even say it. So we just end up talking about it more to ourselves because we understand where we're coming from on our own. Like knowing that you talk to yourself way more into this society than, well, you talk more to yourself a lot in any generation at this point. Even when you're with family, you're talking to yourself most of the time. You don't even notice it. Like when you're thinking, that's technically you talking to yourself. I mean, that's what I personally think. It's like when you're thinking, you just hear your own voice talking. You're like, oh, okay. And it's like some reason you're just talking with yourself in your head. I think that is just like I think how that feels is that you have two versions of you that's just talking to each other and debating on how you should continue a conversation or carry yourself or like um sometimes even when it comes to even eating food it's really crazy how normal it is, but it's so abnormal how how often when you're thinking to yourself, like even now you when you watch, like even watching this video, right? I can be thinking to myself right now, you don't even notice it. You can be thinking to yourself as you're listening and you like zone out for a second. You're thinking to yourself out of nowhere and you don't realize until it happens. Those moments really make you think like, how often do you talk to yourself throughout the entire day? Especially when you have like some free time, like, especially when you have free time, or or sometimes when you're doing something, you're working so hard, right? But in the process when you're working, sometimes you slip into thinking to yourself like, huh, that is a good question. Why does that happen? Like, there's so many questions that are asked throughout the day, and there's so many answers can be answered, but sometimes not the right person has the answer for that question you had, and it's not easy to always have an answer for every question either, because you don't even know everything. So in that same instance, when you talk to yourself or when you question stuff to yourself, it's you trying to ask a question that you might not get the answer you want to from the person you're asking it to. So you just end up having a own conversation to yourself in that process. You're like taking a long time to even say anything because they either look at you like, "Are you okay?" You're like, "Yeah, I'm okay," and you're like, you still like intimate with the conversation, but in the back of your head, you're still thinking about like that conversation you're just having with yourself, or you just go to a different topic like, "Oh, I got something to do today," but it might not be as important as it is, but it should be important because it's something I gotta do. Yeah, we got time to do it like that simple stuff. That's like little chit chat, but in that simple instance, like that's how it works in multiple ways. I mean, me as a human being, me as how I am, I do it quite frequently. I think I'm gonna be honest. I think everybody does it really often. They just don't want to admit it, to be honest, because they quote unquote feel weird, bringing it up. But even when you're an adult, adults talk to themselves a lot. I mean, even when they're having a bad day, those like, oh my god, that's technically muttering out what their inner thoughts felt or felt to say. like the things we put out is mostly from our mental space. It's like sometimes it's not even fully feeling. Sometimes it's just how we like. It's most like sometimes it deals with our mental like, man, what the f, or like something like that, like something that it has a mixed emotion of emotions and feeling that just makes us utter the words out to make either a comment or a reaction or a plain sentence or an argument. It's like a little chain reaction in our head that's like telling like that wants to word it out, but sometimes lack the emotion to let it out. That's why there's a mix of like when you're talking to yourself. When you I'm not gonna pretend like not everybody done it, but I know everybody had this type of moment when you're talking to yourself and you make it's like you have an assumption you're talking and out of nowhere it sounds like you're talking to another person to yourself and it's like and then like something like that, like they make a questionable like noise and you're like, huh, interesting. In a way, how I seen it and how I've been doing and how I've been viewing it, it's like it's not just you talking with yourself, but talking with an emotion part of yourself that's like able to like feel like you're talking to another person, but it's just yourself talking to yourself. And it happens a lot, even when you're daydreaming, zoning out, anything that involves you staring or like pausing for so long. It can either be you trying to think of an answer that ends up with you talking to yourself to be like, what's a good answer I can give this? Or what's a good thing I can do with this? Like stuff like that, that's just natural. I think it's fully natural. I think it's normal, but it's not. It's normal, but some people say that's not normal at all. But even for the people that do say that's not normal, they do it too. Everyone does it. It's just probably not as often as they make it seem, but they do it too. At the end of the day, I think that our differences as people, when it comes to like our thought processes and our mental capacity and what we want to accept then what you want that we have to face eventually makes us human, because not everybody wants to face what they have to, but face what they can take. And when you're thinking about it, and when you end up talking to yourself about the decisions or the situations that you're in, or the trials and tribulations that you've gone through and stuff like that, it ends up with you somehow relaying back the hits to yourself and saying how far you got or how much work you still need to do. And looking at it is like, yeah, it's crazy how often people really do talk to themselves. Heck, I can be talking to myself right now, right after this, or when I'm thinking. Like, there's times I know when I pause in some of my videos, I'm pausing. That's literally me thinking to myself. I don't like always doing it, but I know it happens and I acknowledge it. And there's so many things that a lot of people that has differences say that they don't do, but they probably do it. They just don't want to acknowledge it to the moment. It's like, huh, I really do that, do I? Oh damn. But on a beautiful Monday afternoon, I still sit and ponder on some questions. Like even when it comes to those podcasts or the videos I'm making here, I always think, what's be a good video idea? Like, what should I really talk about? Like, there's a lot of things. Even now, you'll think more than you say or act on it before anything else happens. And in the same price, it's like, and it comes down to the fact that would it be a good one or a bad one? Would it be a bad chain reaction or a good chain reaction? That's where decisions and like mindsets or different mindsets or ideals or teachings will be challenged in that same process, because even though you're taught a certain thing, even though that you follow those teachings and that mindset for so long that you run into a person with a different ideology, I encourage that even though you might have a disagreement, even in that disagreement, you're thinking to yourself and talking to yourself like, how can I approach this without putting my opinion over his and not, or hers over them or their, I don't know, and not sound offensive or a jerk, you know. But it's hard because it's easy to offend people now. It's easier to make people feel harassed or degraded in a way. I don't know, because I mean, I only talk to but so many people now. I'm gonna be honest with you, and I come off as I'll get my story up, but I want to listen to yours. I don't put myself in a position to be like, I want to put my story up and don't want to hear yours at all. My story matters more to you. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to see that because it doesn't end the way as it should be. It ends in a way of like a problem or more so an argument that didn't have to happen because the differences that they had was so overviewed that they don't want to acknowledge that they can either come and break a point and be like, you know what, even though we don't have the same thing, the same like ideals in different in our differences, at least we can hear each other out and see why we came up with these different things. But it takes time. I hopefully think that people on their own just go about time and not always like, even though I say this now, like not always talk to themselves, but even me saying that, I know that's technically impossible because we do it every goddamn day. We do. Even now we do. But I hope that everyone has has a chance to like open their voice to more possibilities and just being like, I can only talk to one or two couple people. Like, yeah, anxiety that kicks in a lot. I'll talk about that one day. But in the same absences, don't be afraid to talk to a person that has a different background because you never know if you like him or not. I mean, that's why we have friends, right? You never knew their background until you got to really talk to them and get to know them. That's really it. I love it. I love this. I love this little joke that was going on. It was like, don't talk to strangers, but those same strangers you meet sometimes become your friends. But it's a great. Today was a great day. I'm not gonna lie to you. I wish I should have dropped this sooner. But you guys have a great one. I appreciate everybody that tunes in and looks at this. I know my audio is kind of wonky. I'm gonna try to work on that better because I know that it's been a little iffy lately. I'll find a world around that or a loophole for that. But I do appreciate you guys for still sticking around to hear me out. So it's a challenging world out there, but if it's to the right people, it's challenging in the right way. And it's challenging to the wrong way for the wrong people. But we all are our own different human, and I'm gonna wrap it up here because time is always moving, you know. But you guys have a good one. We out.